work. It is global. It's got a platform in the United Nations, got a platform in UN advocacy, it's got a platform in UNESCO. It has a seat in the NGO seat in the United Nations. So we are not just somebody that came off the street and saying today, yeah, we are protesting all this destruction. No. We do it 24/7, 365 around the year. And I ask you very kindly, if you would visit www.baqee.org, you will know more information about this. Now I'm going to introduce our youngest speaker right now, Mariam Rizvi. Mariam Razvi, she is very eloquent, and inshallah she will tell you some more facts about Jannatul Baqee and why we are doing this. Mariam Razvi.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mariam Razvi and I'm here to spread awareness about the desecration of the holy sites and the desecration of Jannatul Baqee. Jannatul Baqee is the resting place of the family and the companions of Prophet Muhammad, which was demolished by the Saudi government just because they thought it had no importance. It has been 100 years since the demolition of the holy graves, and it's sad to hear that there are still people in the world who call themselves Muslims, yet they cause violence in the name of Islam and disrespect the family of the Prophet. Prophet Muhammad's daughter, Bibi Fatima the Zehra, who is one of the best women in Islam, she taught many people to stand up against injustice, taught us humanity principles, and taught us how to be the lovers and followers of Prophet Muhammad. How can we let such injustice happen to the daughter of the Prophet, who he loved so much? Bibi Fatima sacrificed her life for Islam. After the death of the Prophet, you know what happened? She was oppressed. She lost her unborn child, Mohsen, but still fought, only to save the message of Islam. And now her grave has no dome, and no one can even go near her or her family's grave to give condolences. Just imagine being denied, being told, no, you can't meet your loved ones' graves. Many of you went to Shahadat a couple months ago to commemorate this grandson of the Holy Prophet, Imam Hussein. You went to Imam Hussein and Hazrat Abbas's shrine and you saw people in tears coming from all places around the world to give their condolences. You went to Qadhiman and you saw 2 big domes and you gave your condolences. You went to Najaf and saw Imam Ali's shrine covered in gold. Bibi Fatima made sure that 11 of her sons and her husband and her father, no one forgets them. She sacrificed herself for them. Now let me ask you a question. Is there even a candle on the grave of Zahra? Fatima is important to us because she was important to the Holy Prophet. Only a father knows the love he has for his daughter. And a daughter like Fatima is a blessing. A wife like Fatima is an honor, and a mother like Fatima is a miracle. Something that is so disturbing is the fact that she was just 18 years old. She lost her unborn child. She was beaten by the enemies in front of her kids just because she was the wife of Ali, just because she wanted justice for her husband based on mistreatment he was given. 1,500 years ago she was oppressed, and 1,500 years later her grave has no dome. On April 21st, 1926, the Wahhabis desecrated her and her family's grave, leaving behind no sign of any grave or tomb. The Wahhabis are going around killing children, discouraging women, destroying masjids, and causing violence, which is against the teachings of Islam. Islam teaches us no matter what religion, what sect, the color of your skin, no matter where you came from, at the end of the day, we all deserve respect to our opinions because we are all the creation of the one and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many people say that putting domes or shrines over grave is shirk and a big sin. So if it was such a problem, then why do we have a dome over the Prophet's grave? Clearly because he was a prophet of Allah. He was important to the Muslim Ummah and he was a role model. But Bibi Fatima was also a role model. She stood up for justice. If it weren't for her sacrifice 1,500 years ago, Islam would have been here today. Bibi Fatima stood up for justice, and we are here to protest against oppression. We are here to reclaim our heritage, religion, and identity. We are here to spread awareness about the desecration of holy sites by the Saudi government because there is no religion and no country on earth that allows the desecration of holy sites and graves. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee!
Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee!
Now you heard Maryam express about her indignation at the destruction in Saudi Arabia, the holy sites. And she equated, let me equate something for you very quickly before I call on the next speaker. She said, Lady of Light, Lady of Heaven, Janab Fatima Zehra Salamullah alayha, she is equal to or higher than status. Everybody's celebrating Christmas right now. Jesus was born to Mary. We believe in her. We believe she's the mother of the prophet. We believe in the Immaculate Conception. Most people don't, but Muslims do. So we just want you to know that. We want you to know that we want to equate that if somebody were to do injustice to her, what would you do? Wouldn't you be out on the streets? Of course you would be. Wouldn't you be expressing your anger and your indignation? Of course you would. That's why we are here. We are equating this Holy Lady of Light, which is greater and higher in rank, according to our scripts and scriptures, to Bibi Maryam, which is very, very, very holy in our holy book. So we just want you to know that. I'm going to bring my next speaker again. She's a young lady with eloquency, Zaina Khan. MashaAllah, I invite her to speak, please. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee!
Distinguished Maulana, respected elders, and my friends of Chicago, Assalamu alaikum. 100 years ago, it was going to be another beautiful day at the cemetery of Jannatul Baqee. The birds were chirping and the domes were shining beneath the sun. And suddenly everything changed. Streets were filled with screams. No one knew that this change would bring a scar to the face of humanity. No one knew what was going to happen. Let's start with the streets of Medina. Women and children were being killed brutally. All you could hear were screams and cries for help. They entered the cemetery and killed whoever they could see. There were dust and blood everywhere. Own bin Hashim writes of the destruction of Baqee. He says, "Before me the valley appeared to be paved with corpses, dried blood staining everywhere all around. There was hardly a tree which didn't have one or two dead bodies near its roots." And most importantly, the shrine of the daughter of our holy prophet Muhammad, the queen of the women in paradise, Sayyidah Fatima to Zahra's shrine, along with other sacred family members, was destroyed. Who were these oppressors? These people were the criminal family of Ali Saud. They have successfully checked off every possible human rights violation, and they are roaming free, sitting arrogantly on the throne of Hijaz or Saudi Arabia today. The unfortunate irony is that the lady who stood up for women's rights back in her day is the same lady whose graves women is not allowed to visit or pay respects to. And why? Because according to the Al Saud, according to their ideology, carrying the self-made Wahhabi ideology of their pathetic ancestors, they're okay with being murderers, they're okay with being terrorists, and they're okay with being oppressive to humanity. But no, according to these hypocrites, we can't build a shrine or a grave around the daughter of the Prophet and the family of the Prophet, because that is considered shirk. But the fact is, the Al Saud destroying Baqee is not our only problem with the kingdom of the Saudi Arabia. And neither is this just a Shia issue or a Muslim issue. It's a humanitarian issue. I don't need to mention how many innocent people Saudi Arabia is responsible for killing and torturing. And sure, I don't need to mention how the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is responsible for major terrorist organizations like ISIS. And I don't need to mention how the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is behind the extremist and oppressive Wahhabi ideology, or that because of their actions, Muslims like you and I face Islamophobia around the world today. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is the biggest enemy as Shias, as Muslims, and as humans. And yes, as a matter of fact, we all thought it was a Muslim country. We all thought Saudi Arabia was a Muslim country. But in fact, it is our biggest threat to Muslim lives, heritage, and Muslim legacy. We regularly hear that Saudi is oppressive towards women, which is true. We hear that until recently they had a problem with women driving and achieving higher education. And there are still gender restrictions in employment. And they have an everlasting issue and restriction with women visiting graveyards. Not only have they destroyed Baqee, but they won't even allow women to visit the ruins of our Lady Zehra. But my question for you all is, why have they for centuries been oppressive to women, and why are they restricting women's rights? Because they know that there is a woman in history whose legacy they are desperately trying yet failing to erase, who stood up against the injustice being done to women at her time. They think that by destroying Baqee, by not letting us rebuild Baqee, and by restricting women's access to Baqee, we will forget our Lady Zehra and our Ahlul Bayt. But little do they know that we will come here every year. Every voice they are trying to suppress will be amplified. Fatima is that personality that was never given peace. The Ummah betrayed her until her life, and until the last minute the Prophet died, until today. And she taught us how to fight against injustice and for our rights. So it is of the utmost importance that today, when Our Lady Zehra's rights are being violated, we stand up against the tyrant rulers of our time. We've been protesting for years all around the globe, but people say we should all be upset, we should all be concerned, we should all be outraged, but we shouldn't do anything about it. But today, we come here to demand accountability, to demand justice, and we are here to demand our rights and heritage. Today, we draw a line in the sand and we say no more. We will not allow you to ignore basic global norms of decency and human rights. We will not allow you to get away with cold murder and destroying Muslim heritage. The 100th year since the destruction of Baqee has started now. Baqee is a symbol of faith. Baqee is a symbol of hope. And Baqee is a symbol of humanity. I urge you to participate in the upcoming protest in Washington, D.C. on April 2023. Let's make this 100th year historic. Ever since I was little, we've been coming to these protests every year. And I've noticed every year the pure ignorance of the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. is pathetic. The world watched as the doormat representatives of Saudi refused to accept a memorandum presented by a crowd of people. Maybe because in it we included a list of human rights they violated, or maybe because we demanded our heritage and lives back. We'll never know. Keep hiding, Saudi. See you in 4 months. Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee!
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee. Now whoever was listening to this young lady, she mentioned a couple of things. Please go on our website, www.baqee.org. You will see it on the banners and slogans that are around here. Please go there and you will see a lot of information regarding human rights violation, women's rights violations, destruction, heritage. You will see all of them. So I'm going to invite my next speaker. She's again a very eloquent young lady, Sister Shahadat Khan, and she's going to come in and she's going to address you all. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Terrorists! Also terrorists! Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shahadat Khan, and I know we're saying Baqee, Jannat al-Baqee, but what does Jannat al-Baqee mean? It was the garden of heaven. But you see, here's the thing about gardens. A garden is supposed to flow with beauty. This garden was supposed to flow with beauty, yet it was destroyed at the hands of tyrants. It was a garden that was supposed to be able to host its visitors lovingly, yet now it must restrict its admirers from even entering. A garden that was the emblem of the preservation of Islam, yet it wasn't preserved because a regime determined it to be a sign of polytheism. This was our garden. This was the garden, home of our beloved Prophet's family. It was in 1925 when Jannat al-Baqee was demolished, and it's now nearly a century. Now this is the grief that we see. Today the grief that we have in our hearts is heavy, but we must turn this grief to fight. This fight is for the grave site of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, and we must fight for him the way Qasim fought on the 10th of Ashura. Fight for the grave site of Imam Zain al-Abidin, the way he fought to spread the message on Ashura. Fight for the grave site of Imam Muhammad Baqee, who was just a young boy during the events of Karbala and Sham. And fight for the grave of Imam Jafar Sadiq, who instilled the love of ilm in us. And fight for the grave site of Bibi Fatima, the way her son, Imam Hussein, fought for the perseverance of Islam. This garden holds our history. Without history, we have nothing. So it's our job to fight for Baqee. And here's the thing about this fight. It's not a religious fight. It's not a political fight. It's not a fight amongst nations. This is a humanitarian fight. So fight for humanity. Today I'm fighting for humanity, and I hope you will too. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee!
Rebuild Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Terrorists, terrorists.
Al-Saud terrorists.
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 Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
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 Once again loudly. Terrorists, terrorists.
Al-Saud terrorists.
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 Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Now, I would like to introduce the next speaker. He's very eloquent, and he has spoken in many gatherings and delivered many, many enlightening and intelligent speeches that you can take home and listen. Actually, there's a message into them. So please listen carefully to what he's saying, because he's got more history, he's got more knowledge, and he understands the atrocities that are being committed right now in Saudi Arabia against Muslims and the trampling on women's rights. I invite Maulana Bilal Rizvi to address, please. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee!
Al-Baqee!
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee!
Al-Baqee! Al-Baqee!
Rebuild Al-Baqee. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the infinitely compassionate, the all-merciful. Within the past 20 years, the world has taken notice on multiple occasions about the seriousness of the destruction of the heritage of a group. In 2001, under the order of the Taliban, when the Buddha statues were destroyed in Bamiyan, Afghanistan, we find several human rights organizations. We found that the United Nations branch, which deals with the preservation of heritage by the name of UNESCO, they took notice. Later after that, a decade later in 2014, when the shrine of Jonah, a prophet who is respected within the Abrahamic faiths of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, when his resting place was destroyed by ISIS, the world, it took notice. You see, historians, philosophers of history, they say that one of the signs of the success of a nation is, number one, to preserve their history. Number two, to respect their historic personalities. And number three, to preserve their heritage and the relics of the past. When we look in the United States, we find that there are thousands of locations which are preserved by the federal historic laws to preserve those areas. When it comes to personalities, we find that one of the greatest crimes is to desecrate the remains of a personality, whether they're buried in a regular graveyard or Arlington Cemetery, for example. One of the serious natures and serious outcomes of neglecting one's heritage is that it is through the neglect of one's heritage and identity is forgotten. If you look at the methods of any tyrant, of any dictator in history, their method has been is that either they suppress that history which is against them, number one, or they reinterpret that history to create a new identity. When we look at what is going on in Saudi Arabia today, or if I would say the Saudi-occupied land of Hijaz, you find that this destruction of the graveyard of Jannatul Baqee is really a destruction of the Muslim identity. Because when we look at the world, this compact, this agreement between the Saud family to govern the state and the Wahhab family to give the ideological legitimacy, this is formed in the late 1700s. The Muslims for 1300 years before that were going to the grave of the Prophet. They were going to the graves of the companions, of the family members of the Prophet, of the wives of the Prophet, buried in Jannatul Baqee. Even when we look outside of Saudi Arabia today, we find that there are many shrines outside in the Muslim world. You go to Turkey, you go to Morocco, you go to Egypt, you go to Iraq, you go to Iran. You find in all of those places we have shrines of personalities who are respected. But the case of Saudi Arabia is that 99% of our historic sites have been destroyed in Saudi Arabia. And one of the goals of the Saud family behind this is to destroy our identity and to replace it with that identity which is responsible for Al-Qaeda today, and responsible for the Taliban today, and responsible for the violence in Pakistan today, and responsible for the crimes of ISIS today. Because at the common core of all of these ideologies is the ideology of the state-sponsored creed of Saudi Arabia. When we look at what Jannatul Baqee means to us, Jannatul Baqee is a preservation of our identity. And Jannatul Baqee is a preservation of a message. That's why one poet would say that when you destroyed those shrines, we began to sing their praise. That when we destroyed those when they destroyed those shrines, we began to sing their praise. For how great must these individuals be that you are afraid of their graves? That how great must these personalities be that you fear the graves of these personalities? When we make this stand for Jannatul Baqee, as we approach the 100th year of the destruction of Baqee, this is not just a stand for the graveyard of Baqee, but rather this is a stand for those holy personalities buried there. And the message of those personalities, that when we look at an individual like Imam al-Hassan, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, you find that where the generosity of others, they stop, the generosity of this man, it begins. That twice in his life, he gave away every single possession that he had. How many people out there can donate 100% of their belongings and have nothing? This individual stood for generosity in that way that he did this twice. We look at an individual like Imam Zainul Abidin Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam. You know, even when you go to the Vatican today, there is a copy of As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya in the Vatican today. When they translated this book into German, the lady who translated it, her name was Anna Marie Schimmel. When she was working on the translation of As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya, at that time her mother was sick. And in that area in Germany, they would have multiple rooms, they would have multiple patients in one room. There was a lady who would ask her that, what are you working on? She would say that I am translating the du'as of a Muslim figure who was the great-grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. She said that we as Christians have our own tradition, that why don't you work on our own supplications? Anna Marie Schimmel says that I didn't reply to her then. But what I did is that I sent this book of supplications once I had translated it. When that lady, she read the translation of these du'as, she said that never have I felt a connection with God as when I read these supplications. In other words, Jannatul Baqee is more than just our stand for identity. In these days where people celebrate a religious holiday, whether it is Hanukkah, whether it's Christmas for Christianity, you find the stand of Baqee is a stand of identity, the stand of Baqee is a stand of a religion, and the stand of Baqee is a stand for humanity, because each group seeks to preserve their history, and via that history, they seek to preserve their identity. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Al Saud terrorist. Al Saud terrorist. Al Saud terrorist. Al Baqee, Al Baqee. 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 MashaAllah, that was a very eloquent speech by Maulana Bilal Rizvi. And I hope the listeners that listen, if you want further details, if you want to know why we are here, if you want to know what is a small group over here protesting on a cold day like this, the reason is that there was massive destruction done and is continuously being done. Before I get into that, I just want you to I want you to have a website. It's www.baqee, that is BAQEE.org. You go on that, you will see that this small group has reached into the annals of United Nations, has registered this complaint in United Nations, has taken this case, an evidentiary case, mind you. An evidentiary case means that we have over 150 complaints recorded, written, and documented, so that they will know, the people, the powers in the United Nations, the countries that come over there, and they extol the rights of human rights and talk about humanity. We want them to know there is great injustice being done in one country, that everybody's turning a blind eye to that. And why we may ask they are doing that? Because they are a powerful country, because we in United States have very vested interest in them, because of the arms supplies and the oil. The country is Saudi Arabia. They profess extreme ideology, extremist ideology. You remember 9/11, don't you? Do I have to remind you, 19 out of the 21 hijackers were who? Saudi Arabian descent. So this is nothing new to the United States citizenship or citizenry or people. It is known world over what they are doing. But unfortunately, evil has its resources to hide their evil doings. And you know, whenever somebody is on the path of truth and justice, there are not too many people with them. Reason being, it's a hard path to go. And you are fighting against a huge mountain. But that's okay, because we believe in Almighty, we believe in our holy personalities, like Bibi Zehra Salamullah Alayhi. Her gravesite, one of the gravesites that's believed to be there, was destructed in Jannatul Baqee. Our holy imams that you just heard our scholar Bilal Rizvi talk about. I mean, these were great personalities. So I ask you all, please go on our website, www.baqee.org. Look at it. Ask any questions you want. If you don't feel that there is something not in there that you would like to address, write your comments. We will get back to you. We are not afraid of a debate. We are not afraid about talking about it. That's why we are out on the streets. We want everybody to know that unfortunately that there's a regime out there that is destroying, is trampling human rights. The evidentiary claim that we put into the United Nations was based on 4 things: human rights, destruction of heritage, women's rights, and not letting people supplicate over there, and the destruction of heritage. So I ask you, would you stand if somebody came to yours, God forbid that if your father has passed away or your mother has passed away, your relatives, that they would come and destroy their gravesite? What would you do? I'm sure you wouldn't stand idly by and let them get away with it. That's what we are here for. We are here to protest the most peaceful way we can, the most right way we can, and then try to draw attention to this huge injustice that is being done in the name of progress, advancement. Heritage destruction is being done, and a culture is being wiped out. They are marginalizing a particular sects of Islam, unfortunately, to promote their ideology. So I ask you, that is not fair. If somebody did that in the United States, what would we do? We would all raise up and take them to the court. We tried to take them to the International Court of Justice. Don't think we didn't do that. Unfortunately, they would not take it from an organization. A country has to bring a claim against another country. That's their motto. So as an organization, we can do that. But that doesn't mean that we give up. No, we are on it. We have another report coming up pretty soon. So please go on our website. You will see it. You will know. You will, in fact, look at the complaints also. They're all registered over there. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Al-Saud, terrorists, terrorists.
Al-Saud terrorists.
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 Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee.
Rebuild Al-Baqee.
We thank you all for your time and attention, and we hope that you will visit our website. It's again www.baqee.org. Thank you very much.
There are some refreshments over here. Please pick it up before you leave. Jazakallah.
जज़ाकल्लाह भाई बड़ा सलामत हो गया माशाल्लाह माशाल्लाह